Hey everybody, it is March 31st, 2020, Tuesday. I would like to, in light of the shift from Sunday's press conference that I drew, apparently I'm not the only one, drew away the conclusion that our government's doing nothing but waiting, to what happened Monday, which was more of a, almost looked like an industry trade show. Boom, let's show our wares, people. Let's talk about all this great stuff that we're doing. I want to talk about that because I'm excited about it. So the wrong question is, what is our government doing? The right question is, what are we doing? Okay, what are the American people in the American private enterprise and with the, we're partnering with government, what are we doing? So first of all, the role of government. We have the FDA, government agency. The FDA's responsibility is to keep the people safe. They evaluate medical treatments and including drugs, medical devices from under two categories. Safety, first and foremost, can't let anything get out that's going to hurt people. And number two, efficacy. Does it provide value? So does it do what it claims to do? Because you can create something that's totally safe, but if it has no real medical benefit, you're just ripping people off. Okay, so, and potentially causing, them to continue to be sick or die because you're giving them something that's not doing any good. So that's the role of the FDA. And they're not a volume business. The FDA doesn't get extra credit for getting more things through faster. Sometimes it's an issue because, it can add to cost. It can increase the cost of a medicine or a treatment or whatever, increases R&D, that sort of thing. But their job is to make sure that nothing bad ever gets out. So they're 100% quality, not so much in the volume business. But what I noticed when I was looking into some of the the testing that's coming out, there's a thing called emergency use authorization. Okay, you may have heard Trump brag, that they've approved, the FDA has done approvals faster than they've ever done before. Well, that may be true, and any politician would take credit for it, but the mechanism was already in place, and it's called, the approval is an emergency use authorization. It's applied for, it was something created for the event for us to respond to like terror attacks, chemical, biological, nuclear, radiological hazards. But it is also used for any public health emergency like a pandemic. So the testing that you saw from Abbott has been approved under an emergency use authorization. Now, okay, let's criticize it a little bit. On one hand, you might say, well, whoa, wait a minute. We kind of circumvented, shortcutted the whole process. Maybe what we're getting to, well, I mean, you have a very strict bureaucracy within the FDA, a strict procedure to follow, and you want to prevent individuals from making the wrong judgment calls, this and that. So I guess you can make an argument for that. But if you say that this is a crisis and an emergency, then you can expect to reasonably compress the time by taking the focus of the people that really know their stuff and forcing them to focus on this one thing. So rather than, so you throw out all the elements of control that are really just that for tight control, and you empower the people that have the ability and the knowledge and the understanding and bring more of them to bear, and you can improve things. So I don't know if that's exactly what they're doing, but I know in theory that that can work. So my next concern about the government is, what are we, okay, the government's role obviously is in regulating. So we have a free market. The free market does fantastic, wonderful things, but there is a need for some regulatory. There's a need for functions that are super critical, important, that there's not a business case behind it, like national parks, for example. Or state parks, whatever. We all value parks. We want parks. We want to preserve some of the natural environment, but let's face it, there's not really a business behind that. It's not a thing that you can invest your money in and hope to even recoup your investment back. So our tax dollars fund that. Things like infectious disease control, there's no money in that. So, again, that's a valid thing for our government to do. So the other thing is preventing future pandemics. What are we doing? Where did we fail this time around, and what can we do the next time around? Now, just by nature of the fact that our country and our U.S. federal government is the largest employer in the world. There are more U.S. federal employees than any other agency or company or organization in the world. At least that's what I've heard. So, yeah, it's not going to move as quickly and be as adaptive necessarily as something like what maybe South Korea can do. But that's not, we don't accept that and just move on. We need to put things in place. And I think some of that has been done. So the way it's organized right now is we have the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, okay? That, if you consider that like an umbrella. And included in that are CDC, FDA, and NIH. All three of those are under that. And there may be other things, but those three are certainly under that. They've they put a thing into place called the Public Health Emergency Medical Countermeasures Enterprise. So you have an assistant secretary under Health and Human Services responsible for this. They hire someone, they hire a group of people, a team of people, and their job is within the Health and Human Services umbrella to make sure that this is something that emergency medical countermeasures are being addressed. If you take an analogy from business, like quality, okay, you have different departments all doing different things, but you have a quality manager. They don't do the work of the departments, but they ensure that everybody's involved in the quality effort to the extent that it needs to be, so that the quality of the company's service and products are maintained. So you can imagine this emergency medical countermeasures enterprise like a quality arm within Health and Human Service. It also says that they work with Department of Defense, the VA, Homeland Security, and USDA. Now, within the FDA, there's a similar effort, like another kind of like quality. So people whose job it is to make sure all the, people doing all the different functions are focused on what they're calling is Medical Countermeasures Initiative, I guess it is, MCM, Medical Countermeasures. So within the FDA, you have a group who's ensuring that the FDA pays attention and prepares and implements when necessary these medical countermeasures, steps, and the end result of that relative to treatments and medicines and medical devices is the emergency use authorization. So I say all that, it does have a role, there is bureaucracy, but just so we know that there's an apparatus in place, or structure that's been in place for a long time. It's been evolving, and with the after September 11th, and we reorganized the government and departments. The Homeland Security was created. So a lot of this, it's just been evolving. So we have an apparatus in place. We have someone, we have some people who are accountable and responsible for this. So that's a good thing. You don't just have CDC doing CDC and FDA doing FDA, but you have someone, people whose responsibility is medical countermeasures. So that's encouraging to me. So rather than having to build something like that from the ground up, we can do a post-mortem after we're through all of this, and our government heads in the different departments and, the cabinet, whatever, they can look at what happened, they can diagnose it, find out where they fell short, find out where things that they have in place were insufficient or they need to add to it, change. So will they do that? How well will they do that? I don't know. But I feel good to know that the mechanism is in place for them to do that. So I'm going to do a couple more today to talk about the private sector now. But that's what I see going on in the FDA. So be blessed. Talk to you again.